What's up guys, and welcome back to some more Pokemon Sun and Moon coverage. And today we've got this little video, and what we're doing today is I'm going to be sort of taking a look and thinking about what the Alola starters might look like in their shiny forms. This is something that's integral to, I mean it's not integral, but it's with growing sort of importance since the last two generations of Pokemon. It seems like Game Freak is making the shinies more common, I guess. But a lot of people love shiny starters. A lot of people will stay, they'll say, I'm going to soft reset for a shiny Rowlet, and I'm not going to play the game until I have my shiny Rowlet to play with it. Some people will do that. Majority of people won't. They will just play the game. But some people will do that and have a secondary one and say, I'm going to find a shiny and I'm going to play through with this shiny Pokemon. And it's a big thing for some people. Obviously, there are whole channels and people dedicated out there to actually hunting for shinies, and it's just a great thing. So we're just going to look at what, I've gone through and I've made some colour schemes for each of these starters and thought, what might they do? I've looked at previous starter Pokemon and gone through what each of their shinies look like, i.e., compared to their initial model. And I've said, okay, so they've got darker, they're a golden colour, stuff like that. And I've taken that and I've sort of extrapolated the data and I've put it on here. And I've got 3 possible shiny colorations for each of the starters. So if we look at Rowlet first, since Rowlet is the first in the line, grass, fire, water, the first sort of coloration is black and red, and this is chosen, one, because it makes it look like a penguin, black, white and red makes a lot of sense, and 2, I think there was another reason, but it's mainly because it makes it look like a penguin. And it's a really sort of nice, interesting colour design here. A black body with this red bow tie, and red and black go well together anyway. Almost like a suit here. Again, it looks like a penguin though, so you have an owl going to a penguin. They might do this because they'll be like, oh yeah, it looks like a penguin, look awesome. Or they might not do this because, it looks like a penguin. Why would we want an owl to look like a penguin? It's a two-sided argument, so they might do it, they might not do it. But I feel like it'd be really interesting to see, because obviously depending on what Rowlet's future evolutions look like, they could carry on this sort of theme of black and red and white, and then sort of carry it through and have it as the whole line. But black shinies aren't hugely common, just because black's a fairly dull colour. Most shinies are golden in colour, because you want them to look sort of valuable, I guess. That's what they've done in the past. Recently they're sort of swaying away from that, I guess, because they realise they don't actually have to make them look sort of like gold, because a lot of shinies do look like that. So hopefully they will try out different things here and make realise that it's not just about the colour, it's about how it looks and how awesome it is. So the second option here we have for Rowlet is, I went for sort of, okay, it's a grass type, let's make it look loads like grass. So basically what I've done here, as you can see, is its body is now a light green, and its bow tie has gone from sort of green to a darker green, almost like a forest green. I'm not too confident on them doing this. It's not amazingly great, it's more, because, okay, it's a grass type, let's make it look green. Obviously Rowlet has this green bow tie anyway, this is just an extension of that. As you notice, in neither of the shinies so far have I changed the colour of its claws or its underbelly, its white section, or its eyes, or its beak, or its inner beak, I guess. The reason for that is a lot of things like that do stay the same on from shinies to normal colorations to shiny colorations, mainly because they just you want to have some constant. You don't want to say, okay, so we've changed that to the green. What do we change this white bit to? Oh, I know, we'll do red, because some things like that will look ridiculous. So it's nice to have some constants though, and generally claws, eyes, I mean the claws are the same colour as the inside of its beak, hence why I haven't changed either of those. But generally claws, not necessarily eyes, because obviously if the eye is coloured, they will change the colour because the colour is likely also used somewhere else on the design. But claws and white sections are generally the ones that are kept, and it's the same. So then we look at the last coloration for Rowlet. This was sort of just that, okay, so let's make it golden, So I changed its body to a nice gold colour, and then its bow tie, the only colour I could really get to fit was this blue hair. It looks pretty good in my opinion. I mean, you could also put a red bow tie on that, it might work pretty well. I was just trying to get something different from another red bow tie. You could keep the green bow tie, but I think if there will be a shiny form, I think it's likely that they change the green bow tie, because it's sort of the second colouring of the design. And generally, you don't just want to change one colour, one sort of section of colour on the design, because then you get really boring shinies like Garchomp and such, where there's only a very slight colour change. But this is your golden Rowlet. As I said, I'm not too sure about the blue bow tie, but it's going to be cool either way if they do a golden Rowlet. But I would prefer them to do something different, you know, more link it to this penguin like Rowlet rather than some boring golden one. But let's move on to then the second starter, which is going to be Litten. The first Litten shiny we have here is something I've seen it thrown around a few times, and this is a toxic Litten, I'm calling it. This would make a lot of sense if Litten ends up becoming a fire poison typing, because then you have this purple sort of marking on it. But if it doesn't, it could still work because it still looks really cool, in my opinion. At least I don't know what you guys think, let me know down below. But it still looks really cool to have this sort of purple designing. And as mentioned for the eyes, you can see in Litten's original design, the colouring of its eyes are, you know, bottom section are red, and obviously the red is then used, so I've then made it purple in this one to match that up. But I feel like a toxic Litten, as I'm calling it, would look really cool for a starter. I would definitely pick it and hope to get a shiny if that's what it looks like. The second one is a bit of a different one. Again, it's sort of like a golden Litten. However, it looks a bit weird, as you can see here. I changed the red markings to, you know, gold-yellow markings, which looks good. However, you then have to change the eyes from red to gold, and then the backing of the eyes already is yellow. So I had to change the backing of the eyes from yellow to red, so I sort of switched them over. It doesn't look amazing in my opinion, so I hope they don't do a golden Litten, because the eyes do look a bit weird, although it might look cool, I suppose. Some people might think it's cool. I just think it doesn't look the best because there's a huge contrast of colour between the red and the yellow right next to each other. It works in the first design because the yellow is to highlight the eyes and the red is sort of across the body, but the other way around it doesn't really work so well. So I'm hoping it doesn't happen. Then the last one I chose here, I couldn't really think of anything else. I've seen one or two images of perhaps Litten gets like instead of having a black body, it gets like a bright white body. It's a possibility, but I feel like there's too much black on Litten to make it all white. Yeah, if you had to cover it all in white, it would look really it would stand out far too much, and the marking colour would have to probably be black to make up for it. So what I've done here is change the markings from red to blue. It's just an alternative option to this purple colouring at the start. I still think the purple looks better, but the blue doesn't look too bad either. I could see that happening. It would look pretty good. And then obviously you could have maybe like a trio. So like, you know, Litten goes blue, Popplio goes green, and then Rowlet goes red. Maybe with a bow tie. Who knows? Just an idea. Speaking of Popplio, let's go on and move on to Popplio now and see what we've got here. The first one here, I didn't go lighter necessarily, but I see a lot of blue, water type Pokemon do go from blue to a pinky colour, and you can see this here on Popplio's design. You can see I've made its main body go from blue to a sort of a medium pink. Its collar section has gone from a light blue to a light pink, and then its nose I've changed from pink to a sort of a paler blue, and I felt that looks pretty good. I wouldn't complain about having a shiny that colour for Popplio. But of course it could be better, who knows. The second one I've gone is sort of not quite the same, because that's a similar colour there. This is a lighter version of Popplio, so it's not really lighter, but the blue on its body is changed to a sort of a more cyan colour, so you can see the cyan echoed over its design. I've changed its collar to more of a bluey now, a sky blue almost, so it's almost like the collar and the body have switched position, switched colourings. And I have made its nose here red, and this is to link in with clowns, because obviously clowns have red noses. So if it's indeed based on a clown seal, a circus seal or something like that, a red nose might make a lot of sense there, and it might be a nice throwback. Because otherwise, what colour would you make the nose? It could be anything, but red I think would fit pretty well. Then for the last design for Popplio here, I don't have any other ideas on what to do, since most blue shinies do just become a lighter version, or a pinky version, or whatever. So I went here and gave it a red body, which I think it doesn't look pretty bad. It doesn't look bad, at least. It looks pretty good, I think. And its collar has gone from a light blue to a yellow, which I think looks pretty good. The yellow goes with the red quite well, and the yellow is a highlight. And then at the top, its nose is now a cyan colour. A light cyan. I think it looks pretty good. I wouldn't complain if any of these three were Popplio shiny. I'm not going to say, oh, it's a terrible shiny. It looks pretty good they look pretty good in my opinion. Obviously, I made them, and I'm the one that designed the colour scheme, so I would say that. But what I want to know is what you guys think. I've picked out my three favourites, which are basically just the top ones for each of them. So the Penguin Rowlet, the Toxic Litten, and I just call it the Pink Popplio. Those are my three choices. However, what I want to know is what you guys think. Which of the three for each did you like the best? The black and red Rowlet, the green Rowlet, the golden Rowlet, the Toxic Litten, the Golden Litten, or the Blue Litten, and then Pink Poplio, Blue Poplio I think it was called, or the Red Poplio. Let me know which of those were your favourite, and also, which is it a case of, oh yes, I want to see this Penguin Rowlet, or do you not like any of my possible card schemes, and suggest your own? Feel free to say yes. I think it'd be really cool if Litten became this white cat or whatever. Let me know down below what you think. I'm really interested to see, because shinies are there's something very interesting to talk about, especially when it's always an anticipation of what a shiny for each Pokemon is going to look like, and obviously there might be disappointment, there might be excitement, who knows. It's always very fun to talk about, for me at least. Let me know what you think down below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, but for now, this is going to be it for me for today. I'll be seeing you next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, my friends.